My name is Chris. I am the Rancho campus pastor, and I am so excited to be able to be here hanging out with you again here at Verve. So if you're visiting us today, welcome. If you call Verve your home, welcome. And for everybody watching online, welcome, welcome, welcome. You know what I love about this community is every single time that I'm here, and this is about to be permanent here in 2 weeks, so we're counting down the days. But what I love is that at Verve, we don't want to just hear the word. We want to act on what we've heard. We want to be doers of the word, amen? And so what I love is when I come into this environment, I see people that have like old school, like notepads and like some legal pads and some pens, and we're taking notes. I see some people with their phones out. Your face is illuminated right now. I'm hoping that you're not on like the gram or doing something else, but you're hungry, and because you're hungry, you're taking some notes. Why? Because we don't want to just hear it. You took all this time this morning you look good, you smell good, you're here. And because we're here, why don't we go ahead and open our hearts, open our minds to everything that God is wanting to communicate to us today so that we can live an abundant and eternal life. Amen? Amen. So here's proof. Proverbs 20:5. Let's jump in. Here we go. Right here, right now. Proverbs 20:5 says this: knowing what is right is like deep water in the heart, right? But a wise person draws from the well within. So it's one thing to come and to hear, take in worship, which was phenomenal, by the way. It's one thing to hang out and to serve and to do all that. It's one thing to be here and listening to the word, but it's something completely different. All of those things fills the heart. But what wisdom does is wisdom says, okay, I know where it's located. I'm going to go and get it so that I can apply it. Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, Wednesday evening. It's like we've got to do something with what it is that we're hearing. So I want to challenge you today. Don't just be hearers, but let's be doers. You guys ready to go there? All right. So we're in this series. What's the series? All right, we had a few people here. It's Rhymes and Reasons. So it's our summer series. And during this series, what we're doing is we are unpacking this Old Testament book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs was written by this man named Solomon. He was king of Israel, but historians tell us that Solomon was the wisest and wealthiest person to ever walk the earth. And so Solomon wrote this, right? And it's all of these sentences, all of these cliches that are just packed full with meaning and application for our lives. So much so that the writer Solomon says this book is full of rhymes and reasons to allow us to live life to the fullest. And so last week, Pastor Donnie preached an incredible message, The Comparison Trap. You can check it out on any of our podcast platforms. And today I want to talk to you from this passage in Proverbs 3:13. And it says this. What's this first word? Joyful. So question, how many of you want more joy in your life? All right, then there's a few, you're like, I'm already at capacity. Like, I can't handle any more joy. So let's go ahead and fast forward a bit, all right? When you think about your future self, you want a joyful career. Anybody? You want joy in your finances. Anybody? All right, you want joy in your marriage or relationship. Anybody? You want joy in your relationship you have with your children. Anybody? You want financial joy. You don't want all that stress, all that baggage. You want some joy in your life. Is anybody? I need to know who I'm with this morning. All right, so we want joy, right? We want to be a joyful people. So here's the key. And I'm going to share some things over the next few minutes that's going to allow you an opportunity, if you say yes to it, to experience more joy in your life. So it says, joyful is the person who finds wisdom. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. Now, I don't know a whole lot, but I know this, that if we were to rewrite this verse right here, July 18th, 2021, that it would probably read a little bit different, right? Because if we were writing this passage now, we would probably say, joyful is the person who has 7, 8, 9 zeros after the one to their annual income. We would probably say, joyful is the person driving off the lot today in the G-Wagon. Joyful is that person that has those forever abs. Joyful is that person who has that high metabolism. Like, joyful is the person whose husband just always is in shape. Like, he can always see his waistline, his belly. Joyful is that person. Joyful is the man who is married to her. Joyful is the parents whose kids actually think they're cool. Joyful. Joyful is that person who bought Amazon when it was just $13 a share. Like, joyful is that person. Joyful is the person who has courtside Laker tickets. Come on, somebody. Joyful is the person who has wealth. Joyful is the person who has fame. Joyful is the person who lives in that gated community. Joyful is that person, right? No, wrong. Wrong, so wrong. And that's what Solomon is telling us. He's saying that none of those things are going to bring you joy. He's saying you can search for all of that. You can work till you have nothing left in the tank, but none of that is going to bring you joy, because the only thing that's going to bring you joy is when you make it your priority to find wisdom. He's like, it's only when you get to this point that you're actually going to experience joy, not just happiness. Because a lot of times joy is what we want, but we settle for happiness. And happiness is temporal, and it wears off as quickly as that new car smell. It wears off to our neighbors are no longer like, wow, when they walk into our foyer or our homes. Like, it wears off super fast. And so he's saying, hey, I know you want happiness, but I know that you want one better, that you want joy. That whether you experience all of these other things or not, that your heart is still content, your life is still content because you have joy. You see, Solomon knew that for all of us, whether we're believers or not, whether you consider yourself religious or not, he knew this one thing, that all of us want to be able to look back on our lives, that all of us want to be wherever we find ourselves right now in our lives, and that we want to be able to say that we're happy. That we're happy, that we're satisfied with the life experiences we've had. That we're satisfied with the relationships that we've encountered. That we're satisfied with the meaning and purpose that we've discovered. That we have so much satisfaction that there's days when we actually put our heads on our pillow at night and we have no regrets. And Solomon says, I know there's coming a day, there's coming a time when you're going to want to be at that place in your life where you're going to want nothing more than to experience joy at this level. And the only way for you to get it is to find wisdom. But it brings up a good question, right? How do you find wisdom? Has wisdom ever just like tapped you on the shoulder? Ever got a text from wisdom? It's like, yo, it's your boy, holla back. It's wisdom, just wisdom here. Have you ever just like stumbled over wisdom like you would a toy left in your living room floor by your toddler? Has wisdom ever called you, emailed you? The answer is no. Why? Because it's not that easy. And the very fact that it says to find wisdom, it lets us know that there's going to be something required of you and me, that it's not going to be obvious, it's not going to be easy, that if we want to experience joy, we're going to have to do something. It's going to require effort, it's going to require participation. We're going to have to do something to find joy. But do you know how we find joy? It's through the decisions that we make. Because our decisions determine the joy that we experience. Big ones, small ones, they determine the joy that we experience. Now let me ask you this question. Has anyone ever made a bad decision? All right, we got some posers in the room. Has anyone ever made a bad decision? Some of your ladies are like, yeah, I'm sitting next to him. I'm kidding. It's like, yeah, I'm here right now. I'm missing out on lunch. It's like, Pastor Sonia's not speaking. Pastor Merla's not speaking. It's like, yes, it's a bad decision. No, we've all made some bad decisions, right? So 2 weeks ago, my oldest son graduated high school. I know I don't look old enough to have a high schooler, but that's when you're supposed to say, yeah, you don't look young. Yeah. No. So my oldest son graduated high school. We had family in town, so it required that my wife and I, that we had to drive separate vehicles, all right? And so she had a load in her car, I had a load in mine, and she was running errands before, I was running errands before, and so we didn't get to see each other before we left the house. So she had no idea what I was wearing, I had no idea what she was going to wear, and so due to COVID protocols, we had to show up at the stadium at the same time, we had to walk into the stadium for the graduation together. So I arrive first, like I do most of the time when my wife and I go somewhere. I arrive first, and I'm waiting on her, and I see just this most beautiful, angelic individual just walking towards me. And I couldn't see her eyes because she had these big J-Lo glasses on, but I knew that smoking hot thing, I knew that was mine. And so I knew I had to run to her before anybody else saw that and was trying to like, hey, holler at my wife or anything. So I run to her thinking like we're going to embrace, right? We're going to have this hug. She's going to kiss me. You're amazing, Mr. Universe. I love you. And she doesn't do any of that. Instead, she stands there. She doesn't have pockets, so her hands aren't in her pockets. And she just kind of looks me up and down. And she says, that was a bad decision. And I'm going to show you. Can you guess what she was referring to in this picture? She was referring to my shirt. She said, that was a bad decision. And some of you are like, yeah, you made another one today. But you know what? I don't need your approval. Because the beautiful thing, and this is how the Lord works, is right after she saw my shirt and she said, well, that was a bad decision, somebody walked by and said, man, nice shirt. I'm pretty sure she rolled her eyes, but I couldn't see it, but it was all of the validation and affirmation that I needed. But now let me ask you this, have you ever made a good decision? Now, fellas, I just set you up. You just all missed an opportunity. That was your chance to look at her and say, all right, there you go. But which one feels better? Good decisions, right? We want to make more of them. Why do we want to make more good decisions? Because we want to feel good. We want to experience joy. Now, I know that we're in this season and there's so many changes and so many different things that are happening that all of us are making a lot of decisions. Our family is making some huge decisions right now. And I know that we have people here and you're trying to choose which courses you're going to take, which college you're going to attend, where to invest, where to settle down, or who you're going to marry, who to spend more time with, or who to spend less time with. It's like we're making a lot of decisions. And here's the thing, life is full of decisions. You either make them or they're going to be made for you, but there's no avoiding them. We all make decisions. Now, the power through our decisions is what we learn from them. The power is in how we act and how we respond to the things that are inside of us, because our decisions are a lot like our appetites. And that whatever it is that we're hungry for, whatever it is that we crave, we tend to feed. So when I want Mexican food, do you know what I do? Not a trick question. I eat Mexican food. When it's 1 a.m. and I want Ben & Jerry's ice cream, a little Cherry Garcia in my life, do you know what I do? No, I don't eat ice cream, I pray. No, of course, I eat ice cream. I get dressed, kids get dressed. Well, we put on slides, we put on some sandals. We go to the store, go to the gas station, open 24 hours, and I get ice cream. Why? Because it's what I crave. But what happens if I continue to say yes to that craving? I'm going to look like a bloated cheetah is what's going to happen. I'm not going to be able to wear these shirts anymore. I'm going to have a little bit more excess than I want to have if I continue to say yes to that craving and that hunger for Ben & Jerry's at 1 a.m. And here's the truth for all of us, that a lot of us have a little excess in our lives because of the cravings that we're trying to satisfy. That all of us, I'll just put it more clearly, that all of us have some regrets in our lives because of some of the decisions that we've made. And you know what it's done? It's impaired our ability to make decisions going forward, because now we question ourselves whenever faced with an important decision. Do I have what it takes to make the decision? Am I doing the right thing, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all we want to know is like, I want to know that I'm making the right decision. I want to know what I'm doing is right. And this is so important. Why? Because I said it already. Our decisions determine the joy that we experience. We know our decisions are tied to that joy. We know our decisions are tied to our contentment. We know that our decisions carry so much more weight than what we realize on any given moment. We know that. And it's important that we know it. And so Solomon tells us why it's important in Proverbs 3:14 and 15. And he says, "For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies." Nothing. So I want you to think about all of the things that we desire. And he says, nothing you desire can compare with her. Now I want to point out two things. Lady, the first one's for you. He starts to genderize wisdom, and he refers to it as a her. So that's your chance to elbow your man and say, I told you, I'm always right. Wisdom, I'm she, it's like that's your moment. The second thing is this isn't coming from some broke dude. It's easy to say life is better than that when you've never experienced that, right? This dude isn't sitting around living check to check. He's not waiting for that next stimulus check to come so that he can pay a few bills. Like, this dude already has the gold, he has the silver, he has the rubies. He said, look, I've got it all. The house that you think of, the car that well, he didn't have the car, but he's like, all of the things that you want, the things that you think are going to make you feel more significant, that's going to elevate your status, in society and in your little peer group. He said, I have all of those things. So listen to me. That wisdom is more precious than all of it. But how many people do we know that they've made it their entire mission to pursue these things? I don't know people that are like really chasing rubies these days, but whatever the ruby equivalent is, it's like, how many people are just going out of their way and they're working themselves to death and they're doing all of this stuff just to get more of this? He's saying there's nothing wrong with this, but you're not going to find wisdom if you just put all of your faith, all of your trust, all of your hope. If you build it on that, you're going to find yourself in a place where you're not as satisfied as I know you want to be. And all you have to do to get back on course is just find wisdom. Just find wisdom. That's all you have to do. He's saying wisdom is so much better than all of this other stuff. And so he even addresses, and this isn't going to be on the screen, but he addresses those who are just trying to pursue more stuff in Proverbs 21:17, and he says this. He says, are you addicted to thrills? So he asked this question. Are you addicted to thrills? And then he gives us a statement. He says, what an empty life. Are you just enticed by all of this stuff? If the answer is yes, then his response is like, what an empty life. He said, the pursuit of pleasure is never satisfied. But wisdom, on the other hand, will give you everything. So he continues in Proverbs 3:16 and 17, and he says this. He says, she offers you long life in her right hand, and riches and honor in her left. Pretty attractive, right? He said, and she will guide you down delightful paths because all her ways are satisfying. All of her ways are satisfying. So let's go back to decisions. I know there's some of you here and you looking at the decisions you made, and life is really good. And you're proud of yourself, and you should be, because you've made good decisions. But then I also know that there's some people here and you're not at that place in your life, and you're kind of calling to memory some of the decisions that you've made that's causing you to feel a little bit empty or lost right now. And what I know is, regardless of the success that you're experiencing or where you may find yourself that doesn't feel as successful, that neither individual got there by making one choice. You didn't get there by making just one decision. That wherever you find yourself right now, and whatever level of delight or joy that you're experiencing, it's because of a series of decisions that you've made. And what I know about that too is those decisions is that there are some decisions that we can make that's going to put us on a delightful path. But if there's a delightful path, and the inverse of that must also be true, that there's some decisions that we make that will prompt us or place us on a path that's not as delightful. But you know what the good news is? If my decisions place me on a path that wasn't that delightful, then it must be my decisions that can alter my course to put me on a path that is delightful. And that's the hope that every single one of us have today, is that we can alter the course of our lives just by the decisions that we make. Now, Solomon wasn't telling us that we're all going to live to 90, that we're all going to drive a Bentley, that we're all going to, live in a $3 million home. He's not telling us any of that. But what he's saying is, when you make wisdom your priority, regardless of what you call home, regardless of what you drive, regardless of your portfolio, regardless of your friend group, regardless of your relationship status, regardless of all of that, he says you will have joy. And I love this passage in Proverbs 19:8, and it just simply says, to grow a wise heart. And in doing so, you will do yourself a favor. When you keep a clear head you will find a good life. It's the good life. How many want the good life? We want joy, right? So I'm going to help you out. Here's what it is. So if you're taking notes, this is the part where I encourage you to jot this down somewhere. So about 6 years ago, listening to one of my favorite communicators, Andy Stanley, had a sermon, wrote a book all about decisions. And in that book, he gave some very practical information. It was actually one question that he gave, and when I jotted it down, can I just say that it completely freed me of so many different things going forward, where I began to live from a position of power because I didn't have the regrets from the decisions that I was making. And so all he did was ask a question, and he challenged his readers, he challenged his listeners, hey, if you want to make better decisions, ask yourself this one question. And here's the question: what is the wise thing for me to do? Seems simple, right? What is the wise thing for me to do? And although it seems simple, how many of us ask this question first? See, what happens is we tend to ask, like, how much is it going to cost? How's it going to benefit me? Is there an easier way to go about this? We ask a lot of other questions, but we don't start with this question: what's the wise thing for me to do? And you know what happens? Instead of asking this question, because of the other questions we're asking that are feeding the appetite or the desires we have for something other than what God has placed in front of us, then we end up asking this question: how did I get here? How did I get here? It's like another broken relationship. It's like, come on. It's like I've been through like 4 dudes in the last 4 months. It's like, when am I ever going to find happiness? God, like, it's your fault. And we overlook all of the decisions we made to continue to put us in that place because we're making decisions based on the moment. God's trying to get us to make decisions based on eternity, and then we're missing out and we're wondering, like, oh, like, what happened? Where did I go wrong? It's like, God, here we are. It's another month, and I don't have enough money to make ends meet, and God is like, I'm tired of you doing this to me. Meanwhile, your sneaker collection just continues to grow. You know, you got all these handbags, all this other stuff, and you're like, God, what are you doing? And we completely overlook all of the decisions we made that got us in that place. You know, I'll just throw up how Solomon says it. So let's go ahead and throw this next one up. Proverbs 19:3, it says, people ruin their lives by their own stupidity. So why does God always get blamed? We make the decisions and we don't consult God. It's like, God, I have this feeling that I need met. I have this desire, this craving that needs met right now. So I'm going to bypass going to you. I'm going to bypass what's wise, and I'm just going to do what feels good in this moment. And then when it doesn't work out because it's not going to work out, then I'm just going to say, God, it's your fault. You know what's so amazing? Is even though we point fingers at God, even though we blame God, God takes on all of those things, all of that mess that we've created. He absorbs it, he erases it, he removes it so that you and I can have freedom to go forward to make different decisions. And he does it over and over and over again. Why? Because he's love. Why? Because he cares. Why? Because he's wanting what's best for you. Why? Because he wants you and I to experience an abundant and eternal life. But we have to go back to this question. It's all about finding wisdom, right? We want joy. What is the wise thing to do? Now, asking this question in and of itself would be great, but there's actually 3 parts to this question. And the first part of the question is this: in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing for me to do? See, it's not enough just to just look at right now. I've got to look back on the past, and I've got to say, what's the wise thing for me to do? Based on my past, what's wise? Is this glass of wine, is it illegal? Is it wrong? Is it immoral? No. But at one point in my life, I was an alcoholic, and I almost ruined my marriage. So is it wise? You see, there's some areas in my life that I was so weak and vulnerable and susceptible to. And so based on those things that I knew about me then, is it wise for me to put myself in situations that's going to call and stir that stuff up now? See why it's important? In light of my past experiences. And notice it says, whose? My past. I'm not going to make decisions because your past didn't look like my past, and so I'm trying to live my present the way you live in your present because our stories aren't the same. We met Jesus at different points. The on-ramp was different, and where I am in my life and what God is doing, it looks completely different. I'm not trying to judge you on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or anything. Why? Because it's my past. It's your past. And so I'm going to allow God to come in, redeem it, lift me up, give me freedom, give me life, give me hope, give me joy. It's that firm foundation. That's where I'm going. So it's my past, and I'm going to start there. The second thing we have to do, the second part of this, in light of my current circumstances, what is the wise thing to do? Hanging out, your friends say, hey, let's go to Cabo this weekend. And you're like, oh, it's going to be so lit. It's going to be a good time. I want to go to Cabo, but you're broke. And rent's due, car insurance due, that cell bill's due. Your HBO Max membership is due because you had to watch Space Jams 2. It's like, you got all these bills going on. Like, well, I'll just charge it because I got to get to Cabo. So in light of my present circumstances, I'm broke. Is it wise for me to do that? Your wife's been telling you that she feels neglected, that she needs more time, that she just wants to be around you a little bit more, and then you get this call from your friend that says, hey, we're playing 18 today. Is it the wise? Is it wrong? Is it immoral? No. But is it the wise thing to do? And the third part of this question is this. It's like, in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? I want financial freedom. We want to buy a house. We want to be able to retire at 65. But yet I'm blowing my money on all of this stuff right now. Is it wise? I want a relationship with my kids that when they are old and they go to college, I want them to always want to come home. I want us to talk about everything. I want it to be open. I want my wife and I to have this happily ever after that we envisioned for us when we started. Like, I want all of those things in the future. But here's the thing, if I'm not planning for it now, I'm probably not going to experience it. Because nobody plans to make a bad decision. The problem is we just don't plan not to. And so if we're going to step into what God has, I have to look at my past, I have to look at my present, and then I also have to look at those future hopes, dreams, and desires that I have. And then through all of that, I have to ask myself, is this the wise thing to do? Why? Because our decisions determine our experience. Our decisions determine the joy that we experience. And so let me ask you this question. Could it be the reason that we're not experiencing more joy in our lives is because we are feeding the wrong appetite? Could it be we're not experiencing more joy in our marriage or more joy in our relationship with our kids or more joy in our careers or more joy in whatever it is? It's just because that we're following the cravings of something else. We're saying yes to something that's pulling those things away, and actually it's working to kind of like it's this covert mission that's actually creating a divide between me and all of these meaningful things that God has placed in my life. Could it be that the reason I'm not experiencing more of that is just because I'm feeding the wrong thing? You see, this happened with Solomon. He's the wisest man to ever walk the earth. And then early in his life, he had this hunger and this yearning and this desire for God. So when he was faced with the choice, what is it that you want? Do you want gold, riches? You can have anything you want. What do you want? And his heart was so aligned with the Father that when he was given the choice, he simply said, I want wisdom. I don't know about you, but if our dream team was at the doors today, they said the price of gold, I think right now is about $21,037 for 1 pound. And if on your way out today, they're like, all right, we got $21,000 for you or wisdom. Which do you want? We're all walking out with just big fat pockets because they're like, hey, I got $20,000. Why? Because right now it feels like it's going to bring us joy right now. But Solomon was at that place and he was able to overlook that. And he says, I don't want that. I want wisdom, because when I find wisdom, I'm going to discover joy. And when I get joy, my life is going to be everything that you meant it to be when I get to that place. But somewhere along the line, Solomon's appetite changed. And he went from desiring these heavenly things to just wanting these earthly things. And we read that God says that Solomon's heart is now far from me. So you can be the wisest, wealthiest person to ever live and still miss out on the joy that God has intended for you to experience. And if it could happen to him, it can happen to any one of us. But it's beautiful because of the vulnerability that's in this passage, the vulnerability that's in this book. So we don't have to be perfect. And even if we were, we're susceptible, and there's still areas and rooms that we can fall and we can miss out. And God's saying, but even in all of that, you always have the opportunity to make a decision, to turn it all around, to experience me fresh and new, where you can begin to shift your appetite just a bit. And where you once craved these earthly things, you no longer have to crave those things, but you can crave things from me. You can taste and see that I am good, that my mercy never ends, it endures forever, that I'm with you, I'm for you, I love you. And that's what he's saying, is like, that's the level of joy that he's wanting us to experience. I was reading this book this past year, and the author, Hugh MacLeod, he pulls up this passage in Proverbs, and I really love this passage. It's Proverbs 16 and 26. And he says this, he says, "It is good for workers to have an appetite, for an empty stomach drives them on." You see, when we can empty ourselves out of desiring and craving the rubies, the silver, the gold, and all of the stuff that the world is trying to offer us, all of the things that they're trying to tell us that we need to be this or we need to be that, when we can empty ourselves out of all of the need for approval and affirmation from all of these other areas and just focus on what it is that God wants for our lives. And we can allow that craving, that hunger, that desire, that appetite to begin to filter all that we do. Everything in our lives begin to change. Hugh went on to say this in closing. He says, "Welcome to the hunger. It will cost you your life." He says, what would our lives look like if we had a hunger to do something creative? What would our lives look like if we had the hunger to do something amazing, the hunger to change the world, the hunger to make a difference, the hunger to enjoy one's work, the hunger to be able to look back and say, yeah, I did that, the hunger to make the most of this utterly brief blip of that God has given us, the hunger to dream good dreams, the hunger to have our synapses continually firing on overdrive, the hunger to experience beauty, the hunger to experience truth, the hunger to be a part of something bigger than yourself, the hunger to have good stories to tell, the hunger to stay the course despite the odds, the hunger to feel passion, the hunger to know and express love, the hunger to express and experience joy, the hunger to channel the divine, and the hunger to actually feel alive. He says the hunger will give you everything, and it will also take from you everything. But knowing this is actually where freedom is found. And regardless of the path we find ourselves on today, if we can identify what it is we're feeding, and we can make those changes, and we can begin to make a different set of decisions, then we can experience the joy that God has intended for each and every one of us to experience. Will you stand with me? Once again, it's the decisions that we make that determine the joy that we experience. So choose joy by committing to simply find wisdom. And I know typically we've got like 1 to 3 different application points for you to apply to your life when you leave today, tomorrow, and just from here on out. But today I've got one. Just one. When faced with a decision, stop, pause, and ask yourself the question, what is the wise thing to do? I wonder if you would just close your eyes, bow your heads. And I know that there's some here and you've made some really good God-honoring decisions, but maybe you're here today and you've never made the decision to just honor God with your life. Maybe you've never made that decision to give God all that you are and to really make it your priority to just seek wisdom, to find wisdom so that you can experience joy. And if that's you today, and if you would like to, it's so easy and so simple. All you have to do is just pray this simple prayer. God, I'm so sorry for the decisions that I've made. God, I'm sorry for the life that I live that didn't allow you to kind of be the ruler and to be priority in my life. God, I'm sorry for that. And God, I know that going forward, I don't want things to be or things that are to come to resemble things that were. So God, today I'm just giving you my heart. I'm giving you my soul. I'm giving you all that I am, and I'm committing from this point forward to live a life that honors you, to make decisions, Lord, that honors you. And if you're here today and you're in that moment, and we would love to invite you just to come to the front. Our prayer partners are here, and we would love to pray with you, just to talk to you a little bit more about the decision that you've made. Or maybe you're here today and you're facing some very big decisions in your life. And this message in itself was an indicator that God is saying, hey, like, I've got it, just trust me. But maybe the anxiety is still a little much, and there's still some worry, there's still some concern, and you're like, I just need somebody to pray with me. As we go back into this song, again, our prayer partners are here. We would love to partner with you and pray so that you can experience the life that God has for you. A life that's full of joy, a life that's full of hope. Can I just say, you can trust him. He's got it. So let me just pray over the entire room right now. God, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your goodness. And Father, we thank you for this word that we've heard today. Let us not just be hearers, but let us apply this every single moment of every single day. Whenever we're faced with a decision, God, let us start with you so that we can experience joy.